Okay, so I grind my own meat. So here I was grinding some bear, and you always end up with stuff that doesn't go through the grinder, but it still has food value, so I'll add it to my stock stuff container, one of many. Looks like I had some celery in there too. Here I'm trimming up a pork shoulder, a Boston butt. When I don't have wild game, I still grind my own meat, getting rid of the bone. Ground meat costs, $5 a pound. So grinding my own, probably this ends up probably costing me a couple dollars a pound. And freezing the bone and the fat in an ice cream bucket. And then, when I cracked some eggs, I took the freezer container out and add the egg shells and a little bit of white to it. I think it probably clears, gives some stock some clarity. Here I'm putting some asparagus bottoms. Pick wild asparagus. You always end up with the tough bottoms because I got them egg shells in there, and potato skins, onion skins, stuff like that. I can crush that down and get quite a bit in there yet. Keep using the same container until you can't get it closed anymore. Broccoli. Buy a couple heads of broccoli, you always end up with that. And that still has a lot of food value too. So I'll freeze that. We're out here by the wetlands, and I'm gonna, it's a little past right now, but I'm gonna see if I can show you what the smart weed looks like. So here we go. This is what I'm talking about here, and I've tried to make greens out of this, mixed it with other greens and canned it, and it's just way too tough. It never softens up even under the pressure canning process. And like I said, this isn't the best. It's already passed to where it's not really good for picking for what I want to use it for, but here's an example of some fairly new growth, and that would be good. There's a fairly nice leaf right there. And what I would do is I would just take this, a nice clean leaf like that, take it home and rinse all the leaves off. Here's another one here that's pretty decent. But take that home, get a bunch of them. Like if it was about a month ago, it'd be perfect time to do it. Here's one here that's pretty good. So you get a bunch of these, and what I do is I just air dry them, and then I'll put them in the food processor, and then sift out the mid ribs and tough stuff, and just end up with a powder. And I basically use that as a gumbo filet powder. It's called smart weed because it has a slightly peppery, acrid quality to it, and I find that it kind of adds that mucilaginous texture, ochraceous texture to the gumbo if I add that smart weed powder to it. And you're not using the sassafras powder, which is supposed to be somewhat carcinogenic, and that's not good. But yeah, just a little thing that I came upon that seems to work. And then the next thing you'll see is the powder itself being utilized. So it looks like I got some here I'm doing the bear backstraps. I made some butterfly backstrap steaks. There's some choice cuts that didn't make steaks there on the left. And here is the silver skin and sinew and stuff that's too tough to really eat. But guess what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to freeze it. There's my stock stuff container. And in goes the meat. It looks like I had that one already plumb full. So get another container out and get that fresh trimmings. Freeze it. Again, that's the good stuff. Notice to the right, that's bad stuff. That's the undesirable trimmings. Like the gray meat, I call it, and dirty outside stuff. But they're freezing them. See that? Tomatoes. We got some lemon boys. We always grow lemon boys in pots. And that's the bad stuff. The skins that were blemished and kind of rotten. The cores, though, we'll save and freeze. Eggplant. Make an eggplant parmesan. Peel. Get rid of half the peel when I make eggplant parmesan. But I save the peel. It's got food value. There's the tops. Those aren't to be saved. So I got some channel cats here. Some small channel cats. And I saved them because if I catch like half a dozen of them, then I'll fry them whole. But in this case, I only caught 3. So they're going to go in gumbo. Here's where I made my dorsal or cuts around the dorsal fin and behind the head so that I could skin them easy. See where I made those cuts? And then there's my bullhead skinner. I don't really want to show the process of skinning them. It's kind of gory. But there's after I skinned them. And then I'm going to take the kitchen shears and snip off the dorsal fin and then cut the head off and then pull down to the vent, down to the butthole. I cut behind the butthole and then clean out the guts, and then you're left with a nice little catfish. I left the bottom fin on and the tail fin, and look how I cleaned out the inside there. Kind of like if you ever had fried bullheads. Similar process. But I'll take and pack them in to containers and cover them in water and freeze them so they're in one solid chunk of ice. There's my containers after about 6 months of saving odds and ends. There's that broccoli stem chopped up, potato peels, so onion peels, just the wet, not the dry. The dry outside has no food value. I throw that away. Just the wet onion peel that is flavor. Cover everything with water. Run the water slowly so that it penetrates in to the whole container and saturates everything. There's all my containers filled up. Asparagus that you saw earlier. I think that's that stuff that came out of the meat grinder there. Covering it with water. All the containers are full of water. Chicken mushrooms, I'm not a fan of really. And there's some old chanterelles, and they basically, I sometimes pick more mushrooms than I need. So I think those chanterelles were in the freezer for 2 years, 3 years. And then just load up your stock pot with all the stuff. could see the eggplant peel in there for a second. Eggshells. There's that pork fat for when I cut up that shoulder. See how there's a black ice that formed on the bottom? That's from reconstituting mushrooms. I reconstitute mushrooms. Everything's on high heat, gonna bring it to a hard boil. When I reconstitute mushrooms to put on pizza, I'll take the soaking liquid and put them in my stock stuff containers. A lot of umami, good flavor in it. I stir it quite often, especially in the middle on the bottom, to make sure the bottom doesn't get scorched so I don't have a burnt flavor. Then I got a colander suspended over a smaller stock pot. And that's how I'm gonna... That stuff was probably boiling for, I don't know, probably an hour. So I got all the food value out of the stuff I wanted. Served its purpose. Garbage. My apologies to Nick Yamana. But that's what most people consider garbage. You can make food out of. I got speaking of the garbage, there was the garbage there on the floor that you saw me pour the colander out in that, and then everything's reducing now. Everything's reducing, and I reduce it down to about 2 quarts, probably. Here's the 3 channel cats. Look how nice they kept in that solid block ice. Just as fresh as the day I put them in, damn near. It goes into the stock, the boiling stock. Now I'm going to make my roux. I just use a half a cup of flour. I don't sift. They tell you to sift to get rid of the lumps, but I don't. I just stir and smash. Don't overflow like I did there. Then half a cup of canola oil to the half a cup of flour. I got it on high heat. And I like my roux to high heat. I like the roux to be a fairly nice dark chocolate brown. You kind of want to watch it. You got to keep stirring it pretty regularly so it doesn't have a burnt flavor. You want it to have a smokiness, and you want it to be well darkened, but you don't want to scorch. See how hot I got that? Very, very hot pan. Channel cat cheeks. I caught a 6.5 pound channel cat, and when they're that big, you can cut the cheeks out of them on the top of the head, right behind the eyes. And there's some flathead. My wife doesn't care for flathead catfish, and it's not my favorite either, but I caught one earlier in the year and wasn't having a good fishing day, so I kept it, and the flathead chunks go in, the catfish cheeks go in, and then I got a couple mini brats that were left over in the freezer. Chop them up. I forgot to show the Holy Trinity, which is the celery, bell pepper, and onion chopped. Basically, chop up a bell pepper, chop up celery and onion until it's basically the same amount as your bell pepper. That goes in to your roux when it's nice and brown like that. And then the stewed tomatoes, the meat. Then I'm pouring in the stock. I'll pour in half the stock, so about a quart of it. Make sure it's all well mixed. See, when you mix it well right away, right after you add the fish won't break up. So you'll still have nice chunks of fish. We're gonna have little bits and slivers of fish too, from the little cats. About a teaspoon of salt I put in. I don't really like to over salt stuff. I figure a teaspoon would be enough to salt that. I'm gonna add some other salt elements to it anyway. Your stewed tomatoes usually have enough salt in them already, and some of the other stuff, well, like the Worcestershire sauce, I'll be adding later. That's got plenty of salt in it. So here I'm straining my small cats. Gonna let them cool. And once they're cool, I'll pull the meat off. Half a cup of rice. And then I'm gonna kind of do risotto style. I got the heat there, it's probably dang near high. Again, constant stirring. I just stir it let it cook until the rice absorbs the stock, and then I'll add more stock. And then once the rice absorbs that stock, I'll add more stock, etc., etc., etc. Until until all the stock is completely absorbed into it. Just a half a cup of rice. I don't want a jambalaya. I don't want like a casserole hot dish. I want it to be like real gumbo. Oregano. It's better to use ground oregano and ground thyme, but I didn't have any, so I used just dry leaf oregano and thyme. Probably 2 teaspoons of oregano, 1 teaspoon thyme. There's about a tablespoon of garlic powder, heaping tablespoon of paprika, I would say that is. And then Worcestershire sauce. I don't know, probably a couple teaspoons. Bay leaf. Louisiana hot sauce. You gotta have Louisiana hot sauce. There's that smartweed powder. I didn't harvest enough of it this last year, so I ended up using all the smartweed powder I had for this gumbo. And then mushroom duxelles, Duxelles, however you say that. Powdered mushrooms. Wild mushrooms that I've picked and powdered. I have a video of that, of how to do that on here. Here's the channel cat after it's cooled. Be surprised at how much meat you can get off of fish when you do it this way. A lot of times I fillet fish and cringe at how much appears to be left on the carcass. When you cook a fish this way, you get every little bit. Good way to use small channel cats or bullheads. You can use bullheads. I've used bullheads. There's that meat, and then you can imagine times 3. The risotto goes in. It's cooked pretty much al dente, and then slow cooker for a couple hours on low, and you got yourself tasty gumbo. Where's the I think there's the catfish cheek chunk, or maybe a flathead. There's the catfish cheek. So there you got it. Save your odds and ends. And I suppose after saving for 6 months, I made myself some tasty garbage gumbo. Yum yum.